And then, yeah, so welcome everyone. This is book club, virtual book club. Um, yes, hi Tara. And if anybody needs to pop in and out, yes, please do. I'm going to try to keep my fidget as quiet as possible, but I don't know if I can do that. So this is book club. We started book club this year, I guess September of this year. The last book that we did was Stuart Shanker, Self-Reg. If anybody has read Stuart Shanker, Self-Reg, and also read Beyond Behaviors, which we're going to talk about tonight, you will see how closely they are related. Just presented in maybe a little bit of a different way. You'll see that there's themes running through it. And we use both of those books a lot in the work that we do. Um, and there's really great things about both of those books. And I shared in the last book club about some of the things that I didn't love about the self-reg book. I find it really hard to find stuff in this book that I don't like, to be totally honest. So I'm still searching for like, oh, I wouldn't have said it that way, but I haven't found it yet. For people who don't know Lori's my sister up there. Lori has also fully digested this book, probably many times. And I have in front of me the uh, book club notes, which are very easy to find. And I also have, if anybody is interested in adding a fantastic reference to their world, this is the Beyond Behaviors flip chart that has all of the go-to big, beautiful things that are part of that's this world that has it, and you can actually like sit it on your desk while you're talking to people and go, oh, like here's this part, and then here's that. It's some fantastic resource for anybody who loves the book, has read the book, but don't want to go back and read it all the time. All the winner parts are here on the flip chart, and we use it a lot for people too. So yeah, we're
Uh-huh.
going to talk about that. And the good things
Um,
in there.
I use the material in this book because I work primarily with adults, and quite often I do adult parenting support sessions. Um, and so I use the material in this book a lot to help parents understand like what is happening in the nervous system of their young child or their adolescent, and how important co-regulation is, and if how important it is for the adult to be in their sort of green zone because the kids will co-regulate with that. And so it's really powerful to see parents go, oh, okay, I can be the strategy here to actually help regulate my kids. So Lisa's using the material here in this book in a similar way and at ISSP meetings and things like that. But I personally see it as a great resource for anybody who is a teacher, a counselor, a parent, anybody who interfaces with children at any kind of degree. It really is kind of like the secret sauce.
Mm.
Yeah.
So just a couple of little we've got an hour and a half. And next
Can
week,
I just say something?
yes, sure, Cameron, go ahead.
I'm sorry
No,
to
no.
interrupt, but as a teacher, we had that as a resource book in our
Oh, good.
staff room for sure.
Love it. So
Yeah.
good. You're in a good school then.
Um, I think I don't know. Like it was. I think it was given to all
Oh,
schools. Like it was just one of those books. It was um,
good.
uh, uh, from the board. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Love it.
Happy to hear that, Carmen.
Yeah, really. Geesh, that's fantastic. So a couple of things before we get going. Um, I guess since this whole book is about safety, that it would be very in alignment for me to talk about emotional safety. And this book is really about emotional safety and it's the theme that runs through everything. I would say this is that, like the Stuart Shanker book, the experience that you have, and Ashley touched on it earlier about how we time travel and go, oh, I wish I knew this stuff back then. Um, and what caught my attention first about this author, and we'll talk a little bit about her and her story, so everybody knows her current situation. Um, she says, and all the other people who are like the phenoms in this world right now, in the parenting world, who are using brain body science to help understand behavior, say the same thing. I wish I had this information when I was parenting. And they're the world leaders. So they're presenting this paradigm shift to us, and they're living that experience too. So I say to people, so there's the emotional safety for us as grown-ups who are either professionals working with kids or our own children, where even the world experts are saying the same thing. So Ashley, exactly what you said. And I know when I my first read through Stuart Shanker, I was had a little bit of pit in my stomach myself. And I mean, I've taught early childhood education at the post-secondary level for, a long time. And, some of the stuff that we were teaching back over 25 years ago is pretty antiquated stuff. And we didn't have that information back then, right? We had what we had, right? So,
She also says, not only did I wish I had it when I was parenting, she's got three daughters, when she was parenting her three girls. She also says, when I was in grad school, getting her certification to be a clinical psychologist, she didn't learn about it then either. And nobody was teaching it either. It was all behavioralism and sticker charts and all of that stuff. And it wasn't until she was graduated and working in the clinical field for years and years before she sort of stumbled on this, and then it just changed everything for her. So,
mm. So this book, like many of the really great books that are out there, are this sort of pulling together of really great theories from many different areas. So this book does that too. Talks about polyvagal theory, it talks about emotional safety, it talks about upstairs thinking, downstairs thinking, which is not her stuff, that's Dan Siegel's stuff. Like this pulls together all of the resources that are out there that sort of shapes, I guess, her way of looking at children and their behavior. Um, what we're going to do tonight, first of all, I will say this. This is discussion and it's not therapy. So I hopefully maybe people will get really nice things out of it, but it's not a therapy session or a group therapy session. It can feel that way, but it's not. And if you feel like maybe the discussion here makes you think like, huh, I wonder if I should talk to somebody about that. Then you probably should reach out to somebody. Lori's a good resource. There's lots of, call whoever, reach out to your people, do whatever. Know that sometimes talking about, I say this to everybody who comes aboard to do our programs, it's hard to talk about our own kids and the kids that we are working with without thinking about our own childhood. It's impossible, I would guess. We're human brain likes to time travel and stay in the negative. So just be super compassionate towards yourself. And if you got to pop out or you got to turn off your camera or you got to, take 10 deep breaths or walk around the room or do whatever, take good care of yourself while we're listening to this information. Um, yeah. And Laura, you have any other sort of emotional safety stuff to say?
no, I think you covered it all.
Okay. So tonight, well, first of all, I will say that I'll just say Mona like she's my friend. Mona is not only does she have all this stuff and this research and this beautiful sort of practice under her belt, and she's able to communicate it to people in useful ways, which is part of the reason why I like this book more than Self-Reg, because of the all of the worksheety stuff that's in there and particularly the pages where we really do great observations of children, like one page just on what kids like, how they like to move, and one page just on what things they like to smell, like just really really great collecting of data on kids. That's not just like the behaviorist stuff, like antecedent behavior consequence stuff. That it's not that, right? It's this observations of kids even back to pregnancy and delivery,
Yeah.
which we ask every family that comes on board to do stuff with us. Can you think about your pregnancy and your delivery? Like it goes right back to there. So that's the stuff that I like about the book. I love how useful it is. I love the writing in it. It's not too nerdy. It's not over your head. It's written in a way that you don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand. And it breaks it down into really useful things. Those are the things that I really liked about the book. I don't know if anybody has anything about the book that they feel like they want to talk about that made them go like, oh, that's so good. Yeah, Ashley, go ahead.
I love how Mona, uh, I love how she describes safety is in the eye of the beholder.
Hmm.
That when we look at young children, or anyone for that matter, we have to look at them holistically because everybody views safety completely different. And teachers, parents, therapists, nobody truly knows what safety means to that child or to that individual. And I believe that's where connection comes in. She states that a lot in this book. You have to build a relationship, you have to build connections. It's not about compliance, that has to go right out through the window. Um, this is not old school. This is looking at every person holistically. And once we do that, the world will be a better place. I'm going to be honest with you. And there's a lot of people that don't do that because the resources aren't there, perhaps. There's not enough educators, there's not enough supports. I believe that young children, their parents should be a part of the school program. There should be like classes for even parents to learn about professional development, professional learning, so that they can utilize some space in the school for their children, um, or just for any child that if they have the appropriate education to be able to help or the experience. She talked a lot about community. If once everybody like just came together, it would just be perfect. But we don't live in that world, unfortunately. But you know what? These meetings and these books, and the more people talk about it, the more information gets put out about this, the better it will be, you know? And I love the fact that she used green, red, blue. Um, when she broke that down, that made a lot of sense because everything that you learned in child development and positive behavior guidance, like when I was going to school, um, like the videos that were shown, everything, it just described like the attention, like when you give a child attention and that's green, that means go, it means it's great, and then when you take it away, that's red, that's the issue. We're too busy for the children.
Mm. It-
And
yeah.
we don't see it. Sometimes we just don't see it. And I'm looking at everybody. Everybody lives a busy life, and the economy takes a toll on that. Because you have to work, you have to be busy, you have to take care of the family, but that automatically puts parents and teachers and anybody in the red zone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's important to think about how hard it is. Well, first of all, I'll say this. Um, unless you were, this is, I'm trying to remember the year that this book is. A new version of this book just was published 2 weeks ago. The second pressing, I'll say. And but her book after this, the Body Brain one, which was a couple of years ago, like I don't know if not to get too much into how old myself and Lori are, but we're closer to 60 than we are to 50. And most of our people who are of my age cohort, it would be very, very, very hard to find somebody who was parented this way. And I would say even people who are 20 years younger than me, it would be hard to find people who were parented from this perspective. So, us who are here are learning this stuff for our kids often, or for the kids that we're working with, but then we're learning it about for ourselves too at the same time. So we are building the plane as we're flying it, really, is how I'd like to say that we are trying to figure out our own emotional regulation and our own green zones and our red zones and blue zones and what do we need for ourselves in that because we weren't taught how to do it. Not at school, not even anywhere really. So it's new to us, and so it's important that we understand how it works for ourselves at the same time. So, when we're learning this stuff, we're learning it on two levels, us and them, and that's really hard. So
We're learning it for them and we're relearning it for us.
while we're getting triggered by our own kids.
Yeah.
Right? Like while we are getting triggered. And I had to say this to somebody today during session. Like, I mean, I teach this stuff to people all day long, every day, all day long. It's all I'm doing is talk. Can we reframe that behavior? Can we reframe that behavior? And every day I have to leave my office and go upstairs and do that with my incredibly complicated child. And I spent all last weekend, everything that happened was a trigger for me. And so I got to check myself on the regular. Like I call that, this the parenting Olympics, right? Like that's hard. It is the parenting Olympics, and there is no Olympics. There should be, but it's the parenting Olympics, the morning supper when our kids are not doing very well, all of that kind of stuff. So trying to do this for ourselves, with ourselves, at the same time when we're doing it with our own kind of complicated, in my world, it's neurodiverse kid who's got a lot of really complicated mental health issues. And so how I'm doing really matters, like really matters. And so like last weekend I was going around with my hair on fire and so everyone else was too.
Yeah.
And upon reflection I can kind of figure out why. Um, but in the meantime, there was a lot of apologizing, right?
Yeah.
For that. So it's a plus, it's hard to turn off the news. It's hard to not listen to every time you fill up your car with gas, it's like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, it is this constant sort of us managing our own stress at the same time. So you're right. When she talked about community, it is like, how do we all take care of each other? Because self-care is like, how else we talk about it? I know, but really it should be community care, really.
The second book is all about self-care,
Yeah, exactly.
parental
I
self-care.
had no idea. I'm going to buy it though,
Oh,
100%. And these are not the type of books that you want to give away. These are the type of books that you just want to keep,
yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stole Lori's. When I did this book first, it was audio, so I didn't have an actual hard copy, so I stole Lori's. I stole it.
I have an electronic copy and a hard copy.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up much time, but I just want to share a story that I heard Mona on a podcast just this morning. I don't know if anybody here like listens to podcasts or audiobooks as you're doing things around the house, but that's sort of my thing that I'm doing. I actually find I get stuff done. I'm looking around going, wow, look how much stuff I got done just because I had something in my ears.
Yep.
That's the correlation. But anyways, um, Mona, well, I think 2 years ago, got really sick and she had a major brain bleed, and she's still recovering. She's
Yeah,
but
almost
what I
done.
found, yeah, what I found interesting on the podcast today that she was talking about is her nervous system picked up cues of safety while she was in a coma, even. So she was hooked up to But she says, because I'm sure she's right, she was in the States in a coma for months in the hospital. She was hooked up to millions of dollars worth of monitoring equipment. So her heart rate and her blood pressure and everything was being monitored 24/7. So her and her husband were telling this story today that her husband was smart enough because he understood all of this work that she has done. So he was smart enough to make sure she had like the most her most favorite classical music in the room, even when she was in her coma. He knew that she loved to have her feet massaged in a certain way, so they did that while she was in her coma. They spoke to her in really gentle tone and all that stuff, and they could see her heart rate variability change, even though she was in a coma. And so this doctor, a neurologist who would come in and talk to her in certain ways and talk to her family in certain ways, he was kind of coming at the world in the red zone. He was coming in kind of hot and heavy, and everybody in the room was picking up on his energy, and the equipment would change. Her monitoring would change. Her heart rate would go up. Her blood pressure would go up. Her variability would change, and he would be asking kind of to see if she was kind of coming awake, like move your toes or squeeze your hands or do whatever. And she couldn't do it while he was there. But as soon as he left the room and her family talked to her and co-regulated in the real, soft, connective way, she was able to do the things that he was asking her to do, but she couldn't do it while he was there. So she was like, you couldn't have had a more perfect kind of experiment to see like how is this actually working? And the reason that she came out, one of the first things that she did when she came out of her coma, she came out because her husband was hugging her and he kissed her on the head because he knew how much she loved to kiss on the head. And that's kind of what brought her out of the coma. So it was connection and care and safety and just providing that sensory. She talks a lot about the sensory needs. So like if you're going to try to communicate safety, it's really important, kind of like what the ears can hear, what the eyes can see, what the skin can touch, and what, those kinds of sensory things. So anyway, as I was listening to it, I thought I have to share this tonight because it's not just like going to shift behavior. We see it'll shift behavior in our kids, but like it changes your heart rate, your blood pressure, your temperature,
Well,
right
that
down to
makes
the cellular level.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you see if you if you are able to do any really great observations of a kid who flips their lid and when they're
Mm,
coming back online, you see all the facial changes, you see their movement change, you see their breath
mhm.
change, you see all of that stuff change. It's interesting that, when you're so hooked up to the monitors like that, that you could see all that stuff because what she's teaching and what Stuart Shanker's teaching and all the other fine folks who are leaders in this world is like this this the deeper observation because teachers and early childhood educators, I mean, they're the masters in observing childhood behaviors. I mean, that's what you're doing all day long is observing children's behaviors. And what they're suggesting is, can we dive deeper? Can we see what that behavior is communicating? And that's the part that changes everything. It's not that this kid is doing this thing. We're going to ask why. Like the title, even if we could just talk about the title for a while, sets the stage for what we're doing. We're looking beyond the behavior, under the skin, right? Like neurologically, neurobiologically, the like the behaviors that are happening are like the most primitive kind of attention getting behaviors because they're designed to get our attention. The challenge is that they're very triggering to us sometimes. That's us, right? We've got to work on our own stuff to not be triggered by all the behavior. And so, like, the title of it sort of sets the stage for what we're doing, how we are going to just know that, yeah, that's what we see, but what is really happening.
Hmm.
The questions that I got, because Mr. Google can give you everything that you want right now, plus AI. These are questions that were put together for a group of teachers who were doing book club of this book. And so the questions were kind of put in a way that's like, well, she says this, but is this really true based on teachers' experiences? Or is that really what we feel based on how our world works? And so like when there's a section in the book that really breaks down co-regulation for about the pathway that parents and grown-ups are on. And the person who wrote these questions said like, well, maybe that's right, but do we have time to do this? Like, do we have time to stop and really do these deeper observations and decide what? And Carmen's nodding her head because how many years were you in the classroom, Carmen? Many years, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in my 30 years, I'm retired now, but I still feel my as a teacher.
Sure, of course.
And man, you know, my thought when I think about it now, and I think about several kids who like they really still kind of stay with me because I'm still trying to figure them out. Like time has passed and they're in the upper grades now, but I'm still trying to figure out what was going on in that little head and how did I make the connection or not make the connection. And I see it in terms of safety, so much so. I mean, I'd see kids underneath tables, they would stay in the play area. They would, they didn't want to come near. And you'd be like, no, but this is the time this is what we have. Or, it's time now to go to music class. And there was no way they were going to line up because, they didn't want to line up and you'd have to take them by the hand. And yeah. And I just thought, wow. And if I'd had that information way back then, and I mean, just to say that I should say, just because my school had this book didn't mean that I had read it. I hate to say that, I wish I had. I wish that's certainly something. But anyway, that said, yeah, so much so I see it in terms of how did that child tell me that they're not feeling safe right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see it in so many different ways, like, the kids who are, like I said, sitting under the tables, kids who would stay in the book, that little box that we had in kindergarten, because I taught kindergarten, and they would stay there all day long. And you were like, come on out, we got to go to, recess. And they were like, no, or they just hang out outside play, they just hang out next to you because they had no idea how to, several of them would just not know how to play. They didn't know what to do.
Carmen, if you were to think back about those kids, were they kids who maybe you don't know the answer to this? Do you think that there was any kind of sensory or neurodiversity that wasn't diagnosed yet that eventually did get diagnosed or anything like that?
I can say yes for some of them. Yeah, for sure. Because, I was able to track them and, to say, oh, they're in grade 2 now. Whatever happened to that little child? Right. And,
Yeah.
and you could kind of, see how things were going. But, yeah, I think safety is so important. I mean, they're coming to a school, totally different environment, totally different activities, totally different ratio of adult to child. It is completely different. Like I said, I taught kindergarten. It was just year 1, and so many children were just not ready for that. Just like, I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to do whatever I want kind of thing. They were just kind of held back a little bit, very timid, very shy, just kind of checking it out. And, you were just like, oh, well, go, go play. You've got everything here to play with. And I see myself now as a teacher kind of missing some of the cues and thinking about it now, going, if I was still in that situation, I'd certainly, I think, be able to help in a deeper and more connective way. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
In kindergarten is, I'll throw you a bouquet of compassion. Kindergarten is so hard too, because like from a biological perspective, if Shankar was here, this is where we could pull on Shankar's material from this. Like, it's really hard to be disconnected from your caregivers at that age, because biologically there's the emotional umbilical cord that's really far away from mom and really far away from dad, and besides all the sensory stuff, and it's that lack of connection, so it's hard.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I believe it's kind of next to not impossible, but very difficult when you have a classroom of 25 plus children and you got just a few student assistants, maybe sometimes an IRT. Uh, you got a teacher's learning assistant and the teacher. I mean, how can you build a connection with everybody at the same time?
Mm. Well, it's
Yes. And
interesting that you say that. I was just going to find a resource of. I do some contract work for the Innu School Board. We're developing some trauma-informed programming for their school, and there's some things, anyways, I don't want to take us off course, but there are some things that we're encouraging teachers to do now, that is built into the day that's just particularly about connection. So like you don't have, I think some of the things that when you're trying to operationalize some of this material, we kind of go, holy crap, I can't be 100% connected to 100% of children all the time. It's just impossible, right? And so what the science is telling us is that like if there's stuff that we can do in the middle of our day or at the beginning of our day so that we're doing these micro doses of connection. We're doing it together as a group, or we're helping our children connect with each other, or we're so like here's something just as, and teachers are famous for doing this, is just like looking directly at a child with a soft face with a green zone and greeting them in the morning and saying, hi, how are you? Like that is a connection, and it takes 15 seconds, right? So the theory is that if you can be microdosing connection all day long, you don't have to be 100% connected 100% of the time. That's not possible.
yeah, and there's other things too that it like sometimes it's just like when you catch somebody and you do the like a fist bump too, right? Or like
Yeah.
gotcha, like that kind of like thing that doesn't
Mhm.
really take a whole lot of time, but you can't be in that mindset or that headspace to operate that way. First of all, if you don't truly understand the science and why. Like I think it's really important to lead with the science and not just go in and say to anybody, just this is the new strategy and this is what we're going to do. Because if somebody came to me, this is the example I use all the time. If somebody came to me tomorrow and said, guess what, Lisa? Everything that you believe about children and their development and their how they thrive in the world about connections and compassionate relationships and all that kind of stuff, all of that stuff is wrong. And you know how children really thrive really well is if they're all locked in cupboards under the stairs for 5 hours a day. Like it'd take a long time to make me believe that that was true, right? Like it would take an awful lot of my it's a big cognitive dissonance, right? It's a big change in there. That's the reason why in the States we're still trying to tell people to stop spanking their kids. Like there is a belief still in certain schools in certain states you're still allowed to strap and spank children. And but the ideology around that is deep into the culture. So if you're going to say to somebody, you know, we want connection over compliance. But what about Billy Bob who can't sit still and is doing this and he's doing that and doing whatever? Like, they can't sit still for circle time. None of these kids anymore can sit still for circle time. And then I say to people, well, why are we still doing circle time? Like that's hard, right? Like, can you imagine coming to a group of early childhood educators and say, guess what? We're not circle time we're not going to do that anymore. It's antiquated because 90% of the kids can't sit and do it anyway. They're getting in trouble, they're feeling bad about themselves. So if you're trying to change people's ideas around how to move forward in a different way, you got to give them the science and the information why we're doing it. You just can't say, just go do it. Because many people really do believe a good kid is a compliant kid. They do. They listen to adults. They're good listeners. They listen to the adult. They stand in line. They do it like that's the paradigm shift of this book is trying to get people to see that, quiet doesn't necessarily mean calm. What does compliance actually do to people? Makes our jobs easier for certain.
It masks behavior. And I love how Mona explains that when you watch a child play, and she's your sister mentioned something about how some children don't even know how to play, and I see that even sometimes with my own. They had to learn how to play. And we can observe children about what's going on behind the scenes, like why is the child behaving in such a way through their play. And that is something that I really loved, because if we sit down and listen and just play, we'd be able to figure out what's happening to be able to help. Um,
Hmm.
and on that note, I loved how she used this new language. Instead of calling children nonverbal, she said
Hmm.
non-speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just like, whoa. And I'm just going to reference something here from the book on page 202.
Hmm.
I know we're going way off, but I have to get
No,
this out because
we're not.
this hit my heart. I'm talking about what hit my heart.
Yeah.
She says, I refer to these children as non-speakers or sometimes individuals who type to communicate.
Yes.
These terms reflect acknowledgement that the child's challenge is not necessarily at the verbal thinking level. So she's typically saying there is that a lot of the times, most times, children, non-speaking children, we're going to say that from now on, right?
Yeah.
Non-speaking children can do know what you're saying. They do
Hmm.
because you're seeing it in their behavior.
Yeah.
That's how they know.
Well, the
So
spellers and the typers, like this, like let's just look at the cover of this book. What year is this book? Trying to remember. Hang on now. This book is, oh my gosh, I gotta put my glasses on. That'd be helpful. Um, that
eyeglasses.
language of her, this is 2019. Okay, that's not that bad. Um, that language around the nonverbal phrase into the non-speakers, or now we're calling, we sometimes people are saying the spellers because many can type out full sentences when you give them the right communication. So they're the spellers or
Amazing.
the typers, and some of them now. I was reading a quote the other day. He said before he was given the ability to do the typing, um, he said he was so bored, like so bored, and everybody around him was talking about him like had a low IQ and that he didn't understand what was going on. And he said, um, what happens when that happens to you? He said, like, he used to say, I used to pull the phrase out of my jean shorts, like, so, how your jeans can kind of fall apart. And he said, like, I would be picking at my shorts because I was so, uh, you know, traumatized and dysregulated and stuff. So he said, like, you can see it. I'd pick them and I would chew on it and I would pick it and I would chew on it. And he said, and like, that's what happens to people where they're not seen or their voice can't be heard or those kinds of things. So you can see from the outside if you're a person working with that person. And he was like, I would chew on the pencils and I chew on the erasers and then we do all this kind of stuff. I was bored out of my mind. I couldn't communicate with anybody. And from the outside, he looked like profoundly disabled. And I just couldn't communicate with people. But doing this description of how he would pull at his clothes and chew on it, because you can see it from the outside, right? What we're taught to think that that is, like profound disability, low IQ, all of that stuff. And there's a dad now in Australia who finally advocated so hard for a communication board for his son. And like they're traveling the world advocating for the non-speakers. It's really moving. There's a really good podcast that his dad did on neurodiversity podcast where he talks about how he knew his kid could understand what he was saying. And he couldn't get the school to listen to him. And then they finally got the communication board for him. And like they're at the UN, they're everywhere talking about the typers. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I love it. What else, Ashley? Give us all you got.
There's other people that didn't speak. Do you know anything about the disability? Was it the Office of the Disability Advocate?
The
Have you
new,
looked into that?
have I looked into it?
Yeah,
Um, well, I know the legislation's been signed, so they're going to have somebody sometime. I don't know who.
because I think that somebody educated on this kind of work could really that could benefit, you know.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I
I
agree.
thought that was one of the first things I thought of when I read this. I said, now we're getting support from the government. I hope that, we can utilize the best supports possible.
I hope whoever
Uh,
gets the job has lived experience. That's all I gotta say. Try to
that
navigate through
too.
it. Yeah.
I mean, there's lived experience too, but you have to be able, you got to have some kind of educational background as well, you know.
Hmm. Totally. Um, was there any before I start? Well, we're going through all this stuff in a really great way, so I don't feel like we're kind of all over the place. Was there anything in the book that people felt like? Well, first of all, I'll say this. This is one of these books where
Helen, wait.
um sorry. This is one of these books where every time you go back at it, you'll see something new. Like even in the first reading of it, you can be like mind blowing. Oh my God, that's amazing. And then go back and revisit it in another year and then go, oh, that's what that meant really. Or, oh yeah, now I get it. Now I understand it. Like I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say that it took me, you know, a long time to really figure out about uh like the brain development stuff, like prefrontal cortex, midbrain, brainstem. I mean, I can talk about it in my sleep now, but I remember we were doing a conference somewhere and Lori was explaining it in a really great way. And I was like, oh, I get it now. Like I totally understand exactly what this is about. But I had to hear her do that spiel for, I don't know, 20 times before I kind of went, oh, that's what it means when they say that the brain is, connected, or the people need to be connected, or the bottom part of your brain is fully cooked when you're born. Like I remember going like, oh, I get it, right? So it's a book you can go back to many times and sort of relearn or learn it on a different level or get something new or part you missed before. That finally, you kind of like, oh, the lights go on.
Credit card, so this one, the credit card was on there.
Oh,
Keep it.
hang on now. There we go. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the first time I read this book. There's right at the beginning is the picture of the iceberg. And so, we can we see all of these behaviors. Think about an iceberg. So what you can see is not as much as what's underneath there. And the first time I used that with a parent whose child had a lot of stressors happening because they were, the doctors were playing around with medicines. So we put that underneath the iceberg. The behaviors that they were concerned about went on the top of the iceberg. So these are the behaviors you can see that they're concerned about. So there was an adjustment of medicines. There was a new school. They had moved a neighborhood. So they had moved out of the neighborhood that they were in for a long time. And this child was living with neurodiversity. And so when we mapped it out and said, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff that's going on underneath this iceberg, everybody in the room just kind of went, oh, no wonder he's they're struggling. So I think that like some of the activities in here, and I've used that activity in almost every workshop with almost every parent ever since. And I use the analogy in other workshops that are not even connected to this stuff. It's like there's so much more going on under the surface. And I just thought that the way she mapped that out was like and gave it, and I've photocopied it and used it as handouts in schools when I'm teaching teachers about this stuff too. And it's almost like it just opens up so much compassion,
Mm-hmm.
There's like,
The
no
the
wonder this
iceberg.
happened.
They talk about that mental health, men's mental health, and
Yeah.
um, it gives you a good visual description of like
Mm.
top and bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more going on underneath that iceberg. Yeah,
Yeah.
And within us, like we all have that
of
in us.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. And, for like if we were to do our own adult icebergs, they'd be pretty,
I did that, by the way.
Yeah.
yeah, like our self-compassion might take a little
Yeah.
bit of a peak too with if we did our own adult ones. But when we do the ones with kids, they like I agree with Lori, like sometimes when we really sit down and look at it, like also like kids who are like if we go back to the non-speakers, like that should be really clear to us that that's a stressful way to move through the world. But then I think about kids who dyslexics and like dysgraphia, those kinds of things where they kids are just walking around on 2 feet. They look like everybody else, but they can't read. And what that must feel like every day when everybody else in the room can do, knows their letters and stuff, and it doesn't make any sense to them. Like I think about those kids too, like how that stress of being in that situation every day must
The
be,
cognitive stress of trying to learn, and then the social stress of not keeping up is big. Yeah.
yeah, like
Mm.
it's one thing to see a disability and really kind of go, oh yeah, and even that we're not that good at still. Unless we've lived it in the world and we've, had to try to get somebody in and out of a building where there's no big enough doorways or, the bathroom's too far away or whatever. Like even that is really hard, but for kids and the only way they have to communicate their frustration is through their behaviors.
Mm.
And then we tell them to stop what they're doing, right? Because it's hard for us to do it. So that's part of that iceberg. That's why the iceberg stuff becomes really great because you can sit down with the iceberg and go, well, what about being a dyslexic? Or what about also cognitively being like everybody in the classroom is reading at the grade 6 level and they're at a grade 2, like all of that kind of stuff, like to be able to really sort of do a real good sort of, I don't know, laundry list of what it is. People do go, oh, of course. It's a really powerful tool.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, I love that iceberg.
Yeah. Um, does any like chapter 4 is all about safety. So Herman is,
That was my favorite
yeah, yeah,
favorite chapter.
yeah. Um, let me see. Safety is in the eye of the beholder. You're absolutely right. What I wanted to look at was, I hope I'm not getting too far ahead of us, but
I've already done that. I went all the way to chapter 8.
it's
Um,
good. I like all of the preferences, how they broke down the sensory stuff.
yeah.
And so, like, the auditory preferences, which are really big, really big. What kind of sounds do you enjoy? Can you imagine? This is the thing that I say to people. Just, actually, you think about going, we were comments about how do we connect with all of these kids all the time. Some kids, their house is rainbows and unicorns. They get all the things that they need. They don't have a disability. Their behavior is, they're not the kids. They're not that kid. They're not Billy Bob or Sally Sue, right? Like when Billy Bob comes into your classroom and it's total chaos, then we got to focus on Billy Bob, right? So when Billy Bob needs a whole bunch of different extra things, that's the kid that I kind of go back to. Obviously, the climate of the classroom is important, or the climate of your house is important, or whatever. But when this one kid, or maybe there's two or three in a particular year that come in and things are really, really hard, what do we do in that situation? Because the data says if you are disabled, foster child, indigenous, boy, and brown skin, we will discipline them more and we will expel them more. So the most vulnerable people in our culture, those are the people who get the compliance and the reminders and the don't do this and blah, 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 and all of that kind of stuff. And so I say to people, because I get called into the really complicated cases, I got to go to an ISSP next weekend. And next week's going to be a really, really hard one. Um, and what I say to them is that somebody in that building or somebody somewhere needs to be so connected to this kid that if you got invited to their birthday party, you bring the best present and not the present that all the 9-year-old boys are into. Like the present that this kid would go, they get it. They know me. So you got to pick somebody. So who are you gonna pick? That's gonna do this, right? Ask all these questions. So that's the preface to this. So if you were asking people questions, what kind of sounds do you enjoy? Like what's your favorite music? What kind? Like your nature sounds and human voices. What sounds help make you feel calm and happy? It's beautiful. What sort of things do you like to look at? What are your favorite things that you see in your bedroom or your home or at school or in nature? What sort of touch is your favorite? Is it hugging, holding hands, massage, tapping, squeezing? Um, do you like to be covered in a heavy blanket while you're sleeping? Do you like light sheets on your blanket or no blanket at all? Do you like to hold anything that makes you feel calm? I'm all of this, just so you know. Like I'm under the heaviest blanket you can buy. Um, Do you have a favorite stuffed animal? Do you have a favorite toy? What kind of movements is? They even have fragrance preferences, like food smells, nature smells, outdoor smells, or other smells. Kind of movement preferences. Is it walking, running, jumping, rocking or being rocked, swinging, dancing, skipping, sitting, lying down, clapping, tapping, flapping, or other? Can you imagine if somebody sat down and asked you all these questions? How seen you would feel,
If you'd feel very connected, yeah.
right?
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the data collection part of this book that I love because it's not like, what are you doing that for?
It's the opposite of that.
Like, haven't I told
And
you?
we see that more, we see that a lot, like especially the hand flapping. I will never tell a child to stop doing that. Never. Because I know that that's how they're regulating themselves,
Absolutely.
right? That's how
Yeah.
they're soothing. It's helpful. It's, it's just like you talk about scents. Sorry, my alarm. We talk about scents, and like when you smell in the springtime, I don't know about you, but before the snow came, I was starting to sneeze. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's springtime, you know? So that's an automatic reflex, right? Well, you got to look at it the exact same way. Um, and if you ask a child that, it would be like, why are you asking me that? That's just something that I don't, they won't understand you asking them that because that's a reflex for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, I know that we still got a long way to go, but I do know that there's still lots of programming happening in daycares that are trying to get autistics to stop flapping. It's really bad.
If I saw that, I think I'd speak up, which is why I'm changing programs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I can make a difference. I really don't. Uh, because
It's
everybody has to come together and we're
yeah.
too,
There's some changes are happening, but it's still very hard. Yeah, for sure. We have
I believe it's just as important to help the families to help
Oh
their
yeah,
children as well.
I think you're gonna like that program.
I think so too.
Mm.
I think I
Um,
had to go through this in order to
yeah.
get through this
Oh,
door, you know?
absolutely. No question about that. Um, so that was an hour. We got a half an hour left. Was there anything in the book that people felt like they want us to sort of review or go over? I know Laura talked about the iceberg and we talked about safety. We talked about preferences. We talked about taking histories and the survey and all that kind of stuff. Chapters, the second part of this book, well, this is the first two parts that we're talking about. The last section of this book, which we're going to do next week, is all about neurodiversity and trauma, which is
And I
like,
believe that saving that for the whole hour and a half for next time would be a very
mm-hmm,
uh,
yeah.
a good decision because we're talking is a lot of abuse there,
Mm,
you know, in
yeah,
the last chapter.
and a lot of, things that people don't necessarily know that it's causing trauma, you know.
Yeah.
We don't think about it. And, a lot, it's just one of those things that it's a really great, it's a really great way to end it all together. But we do have another half an hour left. If there's anything in here that people feel like, oh, let's talk a little bit more about whatever. The brain stuff can be a little, the polyvagal stuff can be challenging for people. If anybody feels like they might want us to talk about fight and flight, freeze, fawn, all of that kind of stuff, we could do that too.
I want to share an image that I think is a really good combo of the information in this book with the zones and the brain sections.
Yeah.
That's
Can you?
okay.
Yeah, I need to make you a co-host, or are you already a
Yeah.
co-host? Hold on.
I love this chart. We can send it out to people if people feel like, yeah.
Oh, wait, no. I gotta figure out what I'm doing. Oh, there you are. Okay. I think I
Okay.
know which one it is. I'm gonna.
While you're doing that, I wanted to talk about the part at page 166 when they talk about sending friendly wishes.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Um, they were speaking about Morgan, and there was a early childhood educator, Gay McDonald, master early childhood educator, called Sending Friendly Wishes. In this exercise, children learn to practice goodwill to others and to themselves. It begins with guided imagery that supports children from the body up, relaxed body and breathing, and the top down thinking about images. So that really I do that now, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to give myself a pat on the back, and you will do that when you read this book. You'll see a lot of the strategies that you're using now and some that you haven't, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about this. It actually helped me realize that a lot I was doing right, and
Yeah.
Well, that's
more
good.
so than doing it all wrong. So that kind of made me feel good.
We're doing
I
a
had a
pro
huge confidence boost reading this book.
Good.
a really kind of an affirming book. We're
Mm.
doing a therapeutic yoga program in classrooms in Labrador, and the acronym for the program is trust. So the acronym is transforming relationships, understanding stress and trauma. And I see these kids on Wednesdays and Fridays every day for a year. I pop on Zoom. They're in Labrador. I'm here in my office. And we do gratitude, mindfulness, movement. Like this week, we're going to build a gratitude garden with printouts. We do breathing wands. We do all this kind of stuff. And they love it. Kids love it. They love it. It's a whole body, brain based, bottom up therapeutic program that they get an hour a week.
Mm.
It's beautiful.
Can I say something? In my classroom, and I've only been retired for a year now, but in my classroom, following the SEL curriculum, we would have the children say nice things about somebody,
Nice. Yeah.
and
Yep.
that was I just loved it because it could be like, I love your hair. You're my best friend, just like really lovely little things. And by the
Yeah.
time they were all finished, this child would be glowing, right? Because they,
Yeah.
they they were the star of the day, and you'd
Yeah.
set it up. But that was always something that was really special. And before we had that, like, we never did that, right? We were just too
Mm.
busy learning math
Mm.
and reading and all the other
Yeah.
stuff, and we weren't
Yeah.
doing any of those things.
Yeah.
Although for a long time, I used to ask all the children to tell the children in their group that they were doing a good job, and so they'd be saying, "You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job." But like even that was we had to teach them to look at the child to do that, so there were several steps in it, but I
Mhm.
just loved those little circles where they said something
Yeah.
nice about
Yeah. That's
And Herman,
beautiful.
that's a really cool example of how like when when the adults understand the power of connection, it's not just about the connection between the adult and the child. That's pretty heavy load for an adult to think I'm the only connective factor to all of these children. How can I do that, right?
right.
But connection between two students
Yeah.
is also connection. So
Yeah.
how do you build safety and connection in a classroom? That's a genius strategy.
Mm.
The kids are doing it, and you're also building a sense of belonging and building relationship between the children too. So like from a neurological perspective, once those kids did that, you just said like I could see them, they're gleaming, like they're also happy. What happened was the connection provided the elevator to the cortex.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty genius. So the reason that I love this map is because it takes all the words that she writes about, well, this is this part of the brain, and this is this part of the brain, this is what it's all responsible for. And so you see the blue zone, which is also the the shut down blue zone, which is in her book. Um, Here it's all together. So blue zone is there, which is this part of the brain, and all the pathways for red this is from her book. But if you were looking at this, you could see that it's fight and flight, that it's midbrain, and the green zone, which is in her book. All the details of green zone is here, and then those are the same uh, zones that are on the top there, which is cortex. So like everything in those chapters about the brain, I think is all of it that we need is on this chart.
Yeah.
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 I
It's
love
really,
how who put this together?
This group called Supportable Solutions. So it's I stole it from them. It's
you got your own handwriting in here too,
I
Mary.
wrote stuff in there, yeah, because I like to I'm a spicy gal. I use the word F a lot. Um,
That's what that is.
so, but I think when you're trying to combine the polyvagal stuff and the brain section stuff and her zones, I haven't found anything yet that I guess this person, whoever created this, must have known this too, but um, I added some Fs in there. And they're not all spicy Fs. There's Fs up at the top too. Like when you see a kid and and they feel like they're free to do whatever, there's this just sense of freedom with them and they're having fun and they just seem like they're in a flow zone, or when kids are like flocking together and they're helping each other, or they're forgiving and they're caring for others, like those are some important F's for the green zone, right? And important F's for the red zone is frazzled and frantic and fast and fixated and fidgety, and sometimes you get a little spicy FU there. Yeah. And the F's in the bottoms in that blue zone, because that freeze zone is like, I give up, F it. And it feels really flat and not just F it, fuck, it's the world and everybody. And sometimes kids are thinking this, they're in their blue zone and they look like they're being really quiet. And so I always say to adults, like, let's not confuse quiet with calm. Like, just because you're quiet doesn't necessarily mean that you're feeling green zone. So if people feel like you want to have a copy of that, we can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another really good one that's polyvagal where it's got like a person and you can see their whole spine kind of thing, and it's all arrowed out to a thing that's like this that describes what they're doing. Yeah.
I like this one because it's color, and
Mm.
all these extra words, and then the certain part of the brain stem here, and brain stem,
Yeah.
midbrain, and cortex. It has. I love that. But it also just hit me. I go through all three of these in one day.
You could go through them in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the lovely part about this is that we're all human
We
and we
are.
can't
Yeah.
and the changes is difficult
Hmm.
for a lot of people um to relearn something, to even want to even have the time or the ability to try to relearn. It makes you feel sad, shut down, helpless, it makes you feel that way. Nobody wants to feel that way. um so I really do feel that the beyond behaviors, this paradigm shift should be really included in the curriculum. Like, I mean, taught, not just given a book and expect to read it. I think that professional learning, everywhere, this is like we need more of this.
Well, it's also, like we've been talking a lot about daycare and school, but like every Thursday night, I volunteer at a neurodiverse choir. Really complicated kids who, have really hard days and come to choir and come together and sing. And the group of people who are organizing it have worked really hard to make it a safe place. Like everybody who walks in the door, all the volunteers are like, "Hi, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Like, let me see your fingernails." And like, they all have their own, special interests that we know all about. Like, tell me about the new game you're playing. Like, it's just our faces light up. Now that's authentic. We're not acting. It's the best 2 hours of my week, no question about it. And then they're singing and they're co-regulating together in a group, right? But like we're
And they're
watching,
singing,
they're singing, so it's
so it's
like
auditory.
it's
Yeah.
auditory, it's deep breathing, it's all of that stuff. But we're watching people slip in and out of particularly blue and red zone, and where we can say to them, hey buddy, let's go have a little walk around, and if you can't stand and you can't stay in the group, you're allowed to go to the back of the church and walk around whenever you want. Like you can go and like the stuff that we see, kids who you think they're never going to sing in the concert because how are they? They don't know the words. They're not practicing. They're not in the group. And then concert comes and they get up on stage and they sing and they know every word. They're just listening in a neurodivergent way. They're participating in a neurodivergent way, and there's not one person that says, you know what, if you can't stand in this on the with the choir, then you're not going to be able to sing in the choir. That never happens. Never happens. So this stuff is useful in gyms and, soccer clubs and extracurricular activities because what we're doing in this choir is we're creating this probably only one or two places of safety that these kids have in their lives, especially the junior high kids. They really struggle. So, this it's a really great book to have in all different arenas for people. Anyway, I will say this, the last thing I'll share about the choir, um, about the giving wishes to other people. There's this
Mhm.
thing that two really great things that we do. So we haven't done this in a while, but we did it for 1 year really consistently where every week somebody's in the hot seat, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's not. And so you're in the hot seat. Let's say it's Lori in the hot seat. Lori's in the hot seat this week, and then somebody has a big, gigantic flip chart that's on the wall. And when anybody says, "Oh, well, what's great about Lori?" Like, Lori's a really good makes the best crab cakes because Lori does make the best crab cakes. And then somebody writes that on the piece of paper, or Lori's a really good dancer because Lori's a really good dancer, and she writes like Lori's a really good dancer. And then after the other 30 people say those things about you, you get to take the piece of paper home, and you have all of
Oh,
this gigantic piece of paper that says what everybody like when somebody says, "Oh well." Lori does whatever. It was like, yeah, she does. Like, everybody is this real 1 day of celebration for a person. So that's a really cool thing. And the other thing that they do is that the last rehearsal of the year, all around the room is a piece of paper that has a person's name on it. So all the volunteers, all the staff, all the people who sing in the choir, on their piece of paper is the name. And everybody takes the last 45 minutes or so and just goes from page to page and writes on a person's piece of paper that says, thanks for being here this year, or I really liked your solo, or whatever. And then at the end of the year, you take home your piece of paper that has all your things on it.
Mhm.
that
Um,
kind of sounds, oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say that in the social and emotional curriculum, that's how that compliment circle
Yeah,
was done.
same
I would as a teacher have to write down all the compliments that the children gave. I like your shoes. You're my best friend.
Yeah,
And then I would send it home to the parents, and then the parents would have opportunity to write their own. I don't know. I didn't ask them to bring it back, but
yeah.
yeah, it was a really sweet little thing, and they were like, okay. And then I would would send it home with their little sticker. This is them.
Mm,
This is the compliments that they received today in school, and
beautiful.
so happy to have him or her in my class and that kind of thing. And yeah, the parents loved it. That kind of
Mm,
it was helpful, especially the parents of kids who wouldn't necessarily get a compliment,
yeah.
right? Like here we're teaching children how to give a compliment, to receive a compliment, right? Yeah, that was very meaningful for parents
I
whose
bet.
children
Mm,
were non-speakers or had uh, neurodivergent behaviors, and kids didn't really know how to deal with them, right? Or
yeah,
to play with them, or to,
yeah,
yeah, that was very helpful. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
those are the kids
In
who,
my
mm,
in my children's school, because my children they're getting a lot better now. Um, but even in grade two, the classroom teacher says a list of you are pretty, you are such a great reader, and like all of these And it's like you belong in Miss and Miss, I can't say the teachers, right? Confidentiality, but Miss and Miss family, classroom family. And to this day, since their birthday, since they've received it, my children, it's stuck on their wall so they can see it going to bed every night. It was like it meant so much. So what you guys just said just now really hit home because it works.
Yeah,
It
it
works.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just finished doing a training with this group called Star Commonwealth, and it's 10 steps to create a trauma-informed, resilient school. And there's three, like 10 big steps. And one of the major core concepts in this is called connection and belonging. And so they're trying to explain, which is, when people, just because there's a roof over your head and the lights are on and there's heat there, people say, oh yeah, you're safe here, you're safe here. But that's not necessarily safety. Safety is like, do I feel like I belong? And do I feel connected, right? So that's some of the skill set that we're trying to help people from a classroom environment build, which is like, this is our family. This is like we're all connected and we're all important. And how do we pepper in this like connection and belonging? Because when you really feel like connection and belonging, the nervous system calms, and then you can have more access to your prefrontal cortex, right? So some of the interventions in this program is that when you see children and they're really, really struggling, and in the school zones we call them frequent flyers, like they're just really, really dysregulated all the time, they're always at the principal's office and all that stuff, is that once you start to see that behavior spike, the intervention is connection and belonging. You always start with connection and belonging.
Yeah. It's
So
African proverb, but I'm not going to say it correctly, but I'm going to really try. It is when a young person is disconnected from their community, they'll burn it down to feel the warmth from the flame.
Oh,
So if
oh
you think about it,
yes.
like that's like not even, that's so smart to say, like if somebody doesn't feel like they fit in, I'm not even going to use the word fit in. They don't feel like they belong, because fitting in and belonging are opposites. They're not the same thing. If they don't feel that warmth of the community, then they'll create their own warmth. They'll
Mhm.
burn it down to feel the warmth, that kind of thing. They'll create a fire to feel a warmth. So that's that, all those big behaviors and the explosive behaviors, like everything is designed to get our attention. So I
mhm.
was like that. I'm never going to say it right. I got to go find it somewhere and post it again to remind myself how to
Well, you
say
did a
it.
good job just now.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing it. The way that it's said in the translation from whatever African dialect it is, it's very wise and short. It's like, if rejection, like you'll just have like the warm, if you're that absence of warmth causes another reaction, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
was that child.
Hmm.
You know, having ADHD growing up, it's in a time where, you know, special education teachers really needed to do a little bit more education on uh neurodiversity in general.
Well, there's still lots to learn. We're still learning. That's the other thing. This is what I like about this book and Stuart Shanker's book and Dan Siegel's book, which I think is going to be the next book, is Dan Siegel's book, one of his books, um, is that we didn't have the brain science before that we have now.
no.
So we couldn't like do a brain scan of somebody and expose them to, I don't know, 8 weeks of mindfulness and meditation. I'll just use that as an example, and then scan their brain afterwards and see if there was any shrinking in their amygdala, or they had more access to their prefrontal cortex, or what parts of the brains were lighting up. We just didn't have it. We couldn't do it. And now we can, right? Like, I'm always joking that I want a brain scanner for Christmas, because
I do.
I'd be scanning
Now that you,
everyone, right?
yeah.
Like, we just didn't have the ability. So like, when we were doing when we still are, when we're doing lots of punishments and rewards, we see changes in behavior and we get this false sense of the fact that it's working. But if we were going to swab somebody's cortisol levels in their mouths, because you can do that, you can swab their cortisol, and then expose them to a behavior management program where they get punished every time they can't stand in line, the behavior might stop, but their cortisol levels are going to be through the roof. So we didn't have that science. When I was in doing my undergraduate degree in Mount St. Vincent, I set up in my research class, you had to do a like if you had all the money in the world to do a research study, what would you research? And at the time, I was doing a placement at the Children's Hospital, so I was really into watching kids who were like getting really, really ill children. And I wanted to do like fear of medical stuff, like fear of getting a needle and fear of doing whatever. And they said, "But how you gonna test it?" And I said, "We're gonna swab them for cortisol." And they were like, "What?" Yes. I was like, yes, you can swab people for cortisol. Like even back then, like 30 years ago, I was curious about, well, what's going on here? Like, how do we actually test for stress? And people were just talking about swabbing people for cortisol back then, right? And now you can. You can just like swab, do a test, and swab them again. We didn't have that science. We didn't even have that available to us. So we just believe the behavior stops. So those things work. And they work,
Can
but
I
at
share
what
another
point?
little bit of information?
Yeah.
Did you know? Uh, so I have vitiligo. I don't mind sharing this. I have vitiligo. You ever hear of what Michael Jackson had?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
have somebody in our family who has it too.
So a lot stress. If I go through extreme amount of stress, I lose pigment.
Mm,
I'm not surprised.
So yeah, so um, it affects me physically,
yeah,
physically. So I
Yes.
try to, you know, watch like, where I spend my time to, who I spend my time with, and I'm just very, very like I just very mindful, right?
you
And
have to
some
be.
people will look at me and say, "Oh, well, you know, she used to hang around with everybody, such a extroverted person." But when I realized that my stress level was so high, I had to regulate, like self-regulate myself in order to stay healthy
Hmm.
because it was affecting my skin color. And now I have to go back and get full phototherapy treatments again to bring my pigment back to be so I could be safe for to be under the sun. But I learned that, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, that stress can actually cause you to lose your pigment. I
Yeah.
was mind blown.
It's fairly hard, like that chronic stress, like that never goes
Yeah.
away. Yeah. It's
So
it's
I
very
had to
hard on the
choose
body.
what stress. I mean,
Hmm.
there's such thing as everyday stress, school stress, good stressors, right? Like, stress, working with your children. What if my children didn't have therapy or didn't have resources at NL Health Services? Like, what if I didn't do anything, and I just stood here and they didn't have any support? That type of stress would be a lot worse
Yeah.
than getting up and advocating for my children and for any child, really. So I chose Watch Stress. And because, you know, you choose to, like who you spend time with and what groups you involve yourself in and all of that adds up. It
Mm.
adds up because it adds to it either reduces your stress level. It just overall helps your overall well-being. And I honestly like to connect with groups where I can learn from, like you guys, and people who can actually help and advance other people and people who want to do it.
Mm.
People who are not competitive. I am not a competitive person whatsoever. And I don't know how anybody can be, you know, um, and that's just my take on it. I just want to be the best version of me so I can help, you know, other children and other families to gather all information like a computer, like Google, AI
Mr.
now, to
Google.
gather all the information I could possibly gather to pay it forward. That is my mission in life. 100%.
Well, when you
Yeah.
get into
That's
your new program, if they don't know this book, you'll have to bring it into the teacher.
Hmm.
absolutely.
I think what
Mhm.
you're saying, Ashley, is a really good jumping into the stress of the adult. And I love this on page 109. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too far, Lisa.
No, you're
This
not
the
at
adult
all. No.
the adult pathway. There's a nice checklist in here to see, like, well, where am I? Am I in a green pathway? Am I in a blue pathway or a red pathway? Because before we go in and try to help our kids, we got to be really grounded in our own green pathway before we go in. So
That's
like
the parenting Olympics.
yeah, that is the parenting Olympics. So she says our first step in helping children with behavioral challenges is to assess ourselves before acting. So create a moment of
Yeah.
awareness. I guess she's trying to say pause and ask yourself, how am I feeling? What am I experiencing? And there's this really nice checklist here.
And she says in the introduction of the book that that's the theme through the book,
Yeah.
right? Is that co-regulation and how what am I bringing into a space, right?
Yes. And the reality, I guess the polyvagal reality, if she was here, she would probably say, because there's all kinds of memes about this now. And I put it up as a slide at every workshop that I do that like a dysregulated adult will never regulate a dysregulated child. It's just neurologically impossible, right?
Mm.
And
Well, what was the
yeah.
post I saw the other day? A regulated adult is the best intervention you have.
Mm, yeah. You
Makes
are
sense.
the yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I'm just checking the clock here. We are exactly at 8:30, which is a bit of a miracle, in
Hmm.
the way that Lori and I operate things. So we really want to honor people's time and know that people need to scoot if they need to scoot. And I think that we got through a lot of really good stuff here. I'm excited for next week to talk, to be able to dive into that neurodivergent section at the end. Um, and we're going to send out some resources for people in between. And anybody here, if you're attending live, you get a PL certificate. And if you feel like you want one of those, you can drop us a note and let us know, and we'll make you up one of those for the time that people come here live. And yeah, does anybody have any sort of last kind of comments or thoughts or anything before we kind of shut her down? No pressure.
I want to say something, but when it stops recording.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we're going to stop recording in a minute. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording and then we'll hang out if people want to.